So this is 13 7/8. So I'm trying to get about 7 inches from this line where my circle is going to be drawn to there, and so this is my center of where I'm putting my center circumference. So that's my edge of my table. This table makes the third project that I have designed and built. And with that, it gave me an idea. I need to create a playlist of design build projects. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. And I'm going to call it Design Build. Boy, that's creative. But nonetheless, look for that down in the playlist and you'll see my other projects that I have designed and built, the Fibonacci table and the shop stool. Those are the ones you'll see below. Now what's going to make this quite unique, at the end of the video, I'm going to talk about the design components of this table. I'll show you a picture of the other table that inspired me to build this three-legged table. I'll talk about what's similar in the tables and what's the difference. So with that, be sure and stay tuned to the end of the video for the design part. Now let's get on with the build. So I start with this nice piece of spalted maple. It's one little section of about a 6-foot length of maple. So here's my project. I've got the 3 legs cut. I've got the taper on these legs all cut. And now I need to put them in my planer. So I'm going to get the sides of these all smoothed out and I put this piece of maple through the planer as well, get it flattened out. So it's got some nice spalting on this maple. Should accentuate these legs nicely. Sometimes you have a wide piece of board you want to cut and it's actually too big for your sled. I'm going to give you a tip today on how you can actually cut it on your sled. So what happens, I've got this 14-inch piece that I want to cut, but if I were to pull it back enough to where the blade would just begin at the cut, it's going to fall off the front of the sled. So what I'm going to show you is how to start the cut with your table saw down. You raise it up and then you continue the cut from there. It's easy enough to do and it should work out great. So you put your piece you want to cut on your sled with the table saw blade down, turn on your saw, and you start to crank up the blade. As you can see on the back, right behind, the blade finally reaches above the board for level, and you proceed with your cut. And then you're all done. It's that simple. Now I'll take my top over to the bandsaw to be able to cut the curve. So I have a nice oval. And so I cut some relief spots around the most severe part of the curve. So I have a 3/4 inch blade in there, and it's a little bit harder to turn that one. So you cut plenty of relief cuts, so when you come back to cut the curve, it makes for a nice, easy transition to be able to cut that curve. Each of the pieces falls off gently. So after you do the one corner, you just repeat and cut the other corners in the same fashion. So next I get my legs and I put them with a stop block on my table saw to cut all the legs to the same size. And do that all at the same time, making sure they all match up nice and smooth. Now I'll take the leg one at a time and put it back on the table saw and clamp it to cut my open slot mortise on the leg. The tabletops serve as the tenon to go into this mortise. So I have a little slope on the side where the mortise goes. So I'm basically leveling it out so I can get the mortise cut perpendicular to the edge of the table leg. So once I have the top and the bottom part, then I can just clean it up with a couple of quick passes and get it done in that fashion. So next step in my three-legged table is figure out what sort of shape I want on the legs. So I knew I wanted something a little round over. So the first one I did, I made this little routed over corner, and it was very contemporary looking design because all the edges were nice and smooth. And I was really trying not to get too contemporary, maybe more chic. And so I did this end of it with just shaping it with the hand plane. And I kind of like that. So I actually took this piece, and this is still rough sawn, and I rounded over with the corners, and then I shaped it after that, make it a little bit faster. And I think that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna start the shape with my router bit, and then I'm gonna come back with a hand plane, because I like the look of the plane marks, because it's not all consistently smooth. You can actually see the strokes of the hand plate. I think that adds to the handmade look of the table. So let's try that. So after I work a few minutes on each of the legs, you can kind of see the difference in between the sharp edges and the rounded over have a much nicer, more appealing look to them. So here's a dry fit of the table without the underlying support on it. A couple different views, looks nice, so now we have to build the bottom. So here's my configuration for the bottom support system. I've just got 3 pieces of walnut in a Y fashion, and I'm going to join these together right there in the middle, and we'll do a dowel joinery for this. So here's the dowel joinery for the underside of the table for my Y joint. So now I have my 3-legged table, and now it's time to put a finish coat on it. I'm going to use a polyacrylic and a brush. So let's get started. This was an easy table to finish because of the raised edges of my legs. It made it lifted right off the surface. So all I had to do was put a coat of finish on the underside and then just flip it over and do the other side. Worked out quite easily. Alright, now we're going to show you what happened when we paint, put a coat of poly on this and get this to pop. See that spalting start to jump out at you. Let's talk design. So I have this 3-legged table, and it was this table here that inspired me. Now there's some differences, but let's talk about the similarities. First of all, it's a table. Number 2, it's got 3 legs. Not every table has 3 legs. And number 3, they have 2 varieties or species of wood in contrasting colors. So I have the same features. Now, the different part of this, in my inspiration table, it had notches cut out around the legs. I did just the opposite. I made my legs notched out or open mortise for my tabletop to fit into. And I made this a little bit different shape. Now, the one design portion of this table that makes it unique part is I use the golden rule to determine the ratio of the size of the top. I wanted it in an oval type fashion, and so the length is 1.618 times the width of the table, using the golden ratio to keep that appropriate. If you want to see more about my golden ratio, go watch the Fibonacci table. I give a much greater explanation of the golden ratio, or the Fibonacci numbers. So the other feature is I have these legs which are tapered and hand planed round, or similar to round. I use the actual knotty portion of the wood in here. So with that, it was a fun table to design. I enjoyed it greatly, and this is going to be a little coffee table for me every morning as I set my coffee on top of this table. If you designed something in the past and you're inspired by something, share it with me. Leave a comment down below. Hey, thanks for watching. You like this design feature, be sure and give me a thumbs up. Want to see more of our design? Be sure and check out my design build playlist. And as usual, come back and see us real soon.